Okay, I do believe that did it. Let's see here. I think we are live. Welcome to another Sunday morning live stream. It's going to be a super casual stream today. Today we're going to be making some music with the Electron Digitakt. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be making. Hopefully it's going to be a serious collab today with the chat. If anyone's watching and can let me know that the audio is coming through clean, that would be fantastic. Just going to grab a sip of coffee before we get started. All right. Before we get started today, just going to play you a little piece of music that I was working on yesterday for fun in the Digitakt. Sounds a little bit like this. All right. Thanks, Tony. Pretty classic little chord progression over this little chilled groove here. Hey, what's happening, Evolsky? Thanks for tuning in today. It's going to be a super casual stream today. This is just a little something that I put together in the Digitakt yesterday. It's not necessarily what we're going to be working on today. But what's really neat about this particular groove is the way that I've actually sculpted the kick drum here. Hopefully this is coming through on the stream. What I've got today is I've got some hardware out. Actually, let me go back a step and show you guys this week's poll results. Every now and again, I put up a poll and ask, what should we do on this week's live stream? On this week, we were going to do a Digitakt stream specifically. So I asked, what everybody would like to do on the stream specifically. Whether we should work with the Digitakt only, whether we should work with the Digitakt and some Eurorack gear, or whether we should work with the Digitakt and some various other pieces of hardware, but nothing Eurorack. Now, all day yesterday, this poll results were a little bit different than they are right now. And the winner all day yesterday was the Digitakt with various other hardware gear. You can see just how back-to-back these, results are. 36 versus 38 is pretty close. We actually had 98 votes total. There was 2 more votes that came in even after this. So if you voted on this week's poll, I really appreciate the participation from the community, and thank you very much. I think this is the most participation and the most votes that I've ever had in one of these weekly polls. So thank you very much to everyone who voted. So all day yesterday, the winner was Digitakt and some other pieces of hardware. So that's what I got out and spent some hours yesterday getting set up for the stream. Of course, I wake up this morning and the winner by a margin is now Digitakt only and no outside gear. And rather than just put everything away and not worry about, all the time that I spent setting this up, I figured what we're going to do today is really just get in with the chat and collab with the chat along the way, and that people who are actually here on this live stream are going to help me decide how much of Digitakt only and how much of the outside gear we get into the session today. Let me explain what I have set up. We've got, of course, the Digitakt. Next to that, I've got the Roland MC-707, which is basically 8 channels of synthesizers or drum machines, as we need more sounds or don't. And this is currently already hardwired into the Digitakt, so we can sample from that. I've also got out today the Korg Electribe ESX-1, and I've got my sound bank, Adrenalize, for the ESX-1 all loaded up and ready to go. So we might be able to create some, grooves starting in the Digitakt, and then maybe sample something into it using my sound bank for the Electribe ESX-1 or using the Roland MC-707. I've also got out today the Quasi MIDI Revolution, which is sort of MIDI'd up to the gear today, and we might start something in the Digitakt and sample something out of the quasi-MIDI Revolution. Again, this is going to be really dependent on what the folks in the chat want to do today. I think I forgot to turn one light on here. Let me go ahead and do that and get a couple more degrees of light going. Fantastic. And so basically, I've also got the Novation SL MK3 MIDI controller and sequencer connected today so that I can play any of the instruments from the MC-707 if we go that route, or I can play any of the sounds chromatically that we load into the Digitakt. And that means that I can play for you my kick drum in this patch. Now that I spent a bit talking, let me play the patch again real fast. It's not really a patch, but this, jam. Go ahead and mute that lead synth. This isn't what we're working on today. We're just chatting as we're getting started, because I really want to show you this kick drum that I put together here, because it sounds like standard groove, with the kick, a hat, and a snare. But the kick drum is actually a chord stab. And if I play it higher up in the octaves, you can start to hear that tonality coming through. And what I've done to turn this chord stab into a kick drum is, if we go over to the filter page here, we can see that I filtered it way down. And if we start rolling this cutoff up, it actually reveals that it's a dub chord, and in fact, not a kick drum. But as I keep rolling it down, the filter cutoff, I can kind of turn that from a chord into more of a low kick drum sound. And I just thought that was really, really cool, the way that kind of came together. Yeah, maybe right about there. Then I can add in that extra chord stab if I want. Yeah. All right, let me go ahead and just take a moment and check in with the chat as we are getting started today. What's happening, Ted? What's happening, Martin? Thanks for tuning in, guys. What's happening, Wall? All right. So that's what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with the official winner is Digitakt only, but I've got this other gear out. So we're going to decide along the way just how much we work in the Digitakt and how much we work with the outside gear. Get your Collab and shoes on, friends. Let's do this. We're going to start today by creating a brand new project inside of the Digitakt and starting from scratch. If you guys can go ahead and maybe think about what sort of groove or what sort of tempo we should start working with today. I'm going to go to project, and we're going to go down to load project, and we're going to go ahead and create new at this time. Get a brand new project going. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and check the MIDI settings on this before we go any further. MIDI config. Okay, I need to send the clock out and also the transport out so that when I press play on the Digitakt, that all of the other gear starts going as well. And let's see here. Okay, so that looks like that's going to do what we need it to do there. So all we need to do basically is decide what sort of a groove we want to create today, whether we want to do something like up-tempo, like maybe drum and bass style, or whether we want to do something like maybe mid-tempo, or even like halftime chilled beats. I like to do those halftime beats often. We could even do something chilled, like slowed down dub techno, or we could do like chilled breaks. If anybody can just drop some suggestions in the chat, we'll see what the general vibe is, and we'll get started with whatever the vibe happens to be this morning. I really appreciate everyone tuning in and hanging out with me on these live streams. All right. Let's see here. Come on, guys. I need a little bit more collabing in the chat if we're going to move forward here. We got a request from Samuel, so we're going to go with that. The first one is in, guys. 150 BPM. We got high energy. I don't know about the chip vibe, but we can definitely go with 150 BPM. And what I'm going to do then is we are going to set the tempo of the SL-MK3 here to 150 beats per minute. And that's because I've got the SL-MK3, plugged into the Digitakt. So when I press play over here, I can program, parts if we want to, use the outside gear for sampling today. So now when I've got the tempo on this controller set to 150, then our session on the Digitakt is also set to now 150 beats per minute. And let's go ahead and see about maybe starting off with some chilled, I don't know about chilled, but let's see about finding some drum sounds first. And what I'm going to do, I think, is we're probably not going to need, all 128 sample slots inside of the Digitakt. But one of the things I really like to do is to delete the default drum sounds that are loaded into the project. So, we have as much room to put our own sounds in as possible. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete that factory drum kit real fast. We're just going to go into the sample page, and instead of scrolling for samples, I'm going to scroll left, and I'm going to select View RAM. Now I can see these, 8 samples that are currently loaded into the Digitakt by default. I can use the Yes button and select all of those. Then I can hit towards the right, and I can go down here, and I can just choose Unload. It's going to ask me, do you really want to unload those samples? Yes, we do. So now I can go back and I can view the plus drive for searching for sounds again. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to exit there. And I've got some sound banks for the Digitakt, actually 7 sound banks. And I'm going to use those drum sounds to get us started off with today. So we're going to go ahead and just load like one of my kick samples, or presets rather, onto this very first pad. I've got my sounds stored as sound presets inside of the Digitakt already, my sound banks rather, and that makes them really easy to scroll for these sounds. If we just have the pad selected that we want to add a new sound to, it's highlighted and selected. If I just hit function and I roll the sound browser knob, that gets me into the sound browser. Here I can choose any of the 8 banks inside of the Digitakt for the sounds that I want to scroll in. And I've got my kicks and snares here on bank B. So I can scroll through 128 kick drums here. And then once we get past 128, I've got 128 snare drums after that. So each bank can hold 256 sound presets here. I'm just going to randomly start previewing some of these kick drums and see if anything kind of jumps out at me that I'd like to work with today. Being as though I don't have a particular vibe or genre in mind at this time, I'm just kind of listening to see if anything just sort of jumps out at me, Like, yeah, I want to work with that right now, kind of vibe. I like that one. I think that one's pretty cool. Let's just go with that. That's called Angel. And, okay, so we've got a kick drum. Let's go ahead and get ourselves some sort of a snare drum that sort of we can, pair up with that. If I just select the second pad here and we do the same thing, just hold function and scroll this sound browser knob, now I can get into the snare drum presets that I've got, stored inside of the Digitakt. And we can just start scrolling through these. Actually, what might be the way to go would be not to scroll first, but maybe just to drop in a kick pattern so we can actually hear the kick drum, and then we can pick a snare based on, something that will go with this kick drum here. All right. I'm not sure that's going to be the kick drum we're actually going to end up with today, but for now I'm going to use that to scroll through. So the kick drum's playing, and now I'm on pad 2, and I'm just searching for a snare that we can load. So I can scroll through my snare presets here by just, scrolling through the sound browser knob. And if I want to preview these, I just hold function and tap yes. Ooh, I kind of like the vibe that that's giving us right off the jump. That's snare crosser. Let's go ahead and put that in, shall we? So I think at the very beginning of this session, we have a pretty serious decision to make, and that's whether we want to create a halftime groove or a full tempo groove. This is what it sounds like full tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, right? Where the snare is on the 5 and the 13, kind of the default, pattern for a snare drum. But we can also turn this into a halftime groove by putting the snare on the 9. Kind of a halftime groove. So I think the very first thing, here, now that we've decided on our tempo of 150, is do we want to go full-time groove? Faster, or do we want to go halftime groove? What do you guys think to start off building with today? Full tempo or halftime? Just let me know in the chat. All right. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. What is it gonna be, halftime or full time? I like the way you think. We got Snickle, Fritz McJames says both. If we start off with one, we'll probably make some pattern variations, that go into the other. But depending on whether we pick, halftime or full time in the beginning, it's going to have a really big, impact on sort of the style and the vibe of what we're creating today. Just waiting for someone to throw down a full speed or a half speed suggestion, and that's what we're going to go with. First one I see in the chat is going to take it. Come on now, guys. We're going to need you collabing today. Again, this is halftime here. Okay, there it is. We've got Mr. Coyote's Color. I can't quite pronounce your name, and I apologize, but we've got a vote for halftime. So we're going to go with that. This is halftime here. All right. So we're at 150 beats per minute, and we're at kind of a halftime groove. Let's go ahead and get some hi-hats loaded into this mix. What I'm going to do, I think rather than scrolling for sound presets, we're just going to look for some standard samples from my packs. And the reason that the difference is that if we load a sound preset, it contains all of the settings that may have been included in that sound. Like if, for instance, if we load a sample and adjust like, the bit reduction, the start time, the filter settings, the envelope settings, maybe assign something to the LFO or whatnot, and then we save that. That becomes a sound preset with all of those settings baked right in. But I think I'd like to have multiple hi-hats in this section so we can have a more robust groove than just, one hi-hat banging away. So let's just search for some hats at this time that go maybe with this snare and with this kick drum. If we just go into the sample folder, wherever you've got samples stored inside of your Digitakt, folder-wise, you're going to want to find some hats or whatnot. But what let's do, let's see here. I think we can maybe go into my prime hats pack here. There's like 128 hi-hats in this pack. I'm just going to randomly scroll down, through a bunch of them. And I'm just going to start previewing some of these by holding function and tapping yes, I'm on the wrong track. I'm still on track 2, so it's kind of muting that snare. I want to be on track 3 as I'm previewing this, so it doesn't mute that snare. I like that one, so I'm going to select it by hitting yes, and I'm just going to keep scrolling through some more hats here. I like that one too. I'm going to select it by hitting yes and keep scrolling. Maybe another one. Maybe another one. Maybe a different one. Still scrolling. Ooh, I kind of like that little one there. Let's maybe grab one more. I'm going to scroll, let's say, oh, I don't know, all the way down to about here. Oh, those are open hats now. Let's stick with the closed. I like that one. Let's grab that one. So I've put a little check mark by the hats I liked and want to load into the project. Now I just hit the arrow, press to the right, scroll down to load to project. It's going to ask me, do you want to load those 4 samples? Of course we do. Fantastic. Now we're able to assign any of those 4 samples to this track by default. If we go into the source page, we can assign, this one, this one, this one, or this one as like kind of the default sound that happens when we hit that pad. I'm going to go with that first one there. And I think actually before we do any more today, we'll go ahead and get a save on. I'm a chronic oversaver, and I encourage you all to be chronic oversavers as well. For example, if we're working in here and like the power fluctuates or something like that, and it's just enough to maybe reset the Digitakt and we lose all the work that, we've been started, that's going to be pretty frustrating, right? So I'm definitely a chronic oversaver, and I encourage you all to be chronic oversavers as well. I'm just going to call this YouTube today. So we've got a new session here. Fantastic. Now, at any time during this project, I can just hold function and the little gear icon to save all patterns and project settings. Yes. So I'll be doing that quite often during this session. All right. So now that we've got kick drum and we've got some sort of a snare drum, and we're, got a tempo going here, what I can do is maybe change this from a 1-bar pattern to a 4-bar pattern so we can start getting a little bit more interest in our groove. If I just go function and page, I can change the length from a 16-step pattern all the way up to a 64-step pattern, so 4 bars now. Hit function and page to get out of page. And what I can do is just play the groove. I can hit record and play to get us into a quantized recording mode, and now we put some hi-hats in there. Just a basic pattern, And if I go in, to these hi-hats, I can see on the individual pages which specific steps I've got lit up there. Now, the reason that we loaded 4 hi-hats though, instead of just 1, and now I've, got a hi-hat rhythm going, is now we're going to use what is called parameter locking in the Electron world, and we're going to lock different samples of hi-hats to these different steps so that our hi-hat pattern, has a lot more interest and movement. We're also going to use a little bit of probability in this so that each time our pattern plays through, it won't be exactly the same every single time, and it'll just kind of help create a little bit more interest for the listeners, hopefully. What we're going to do is we're just going to start on bar 1 here, and I'm looking at these hats that we've triggered. I'm just going to start arbitrarily, not even with the volume on, right? I'm just going to start arbitrarily doing some sample locking here. I'm just going to start picking randomly some steps, and I'm going to assign by using the sample select knob. I'm just going to keep holding those steps down, and I'm going to assign different hi-hats to some of these different steps. We're going to go to page 2. I'm going to start doing that same thing here. I'm just going to randomly start picking some of the other hi-hat sounds that we've loaded in, so it doesn't hit hi-hat 1 every single time, but rather kind of makes a pattern scrolling between these 4 different hi-hat samples. All right. 3, 4, 3, 6. Cool. Just trying to make some extra variation in the pattern as it's playing through. And we'll hear this in just a moment. I'm doing it without playing so that I don't have any preconceived ideas of those sounds. And what we're doing with the hi-hats is a little bit more organic, maybe. We just take a listen to how that sounds. Yeah, I'm really liking the way that that sounds. What I think I want to do is remove a little tiny bit of the high frequency content from this channel here, from that's playing these different hi-hat samples. If I click filter once, it takes me to the main filter page of that sound. But if I click filter again, it takes me to the second page where I can very easily just remove some low frequency content that may be hiding out in those samples. Probably not, because I do a lot of EQ work on my samples, but I just want to remove a tiny little bit of the high-end frequencies from these hats. And I'm doing that here using the width command on the second page of the filter. I don't want to like low pass these hats per se. I don't want to like tuck them really far back in the mix. I just want to remove any super high frequencies. All right, we're getting a little bit more like what I'm after. I'm going to bring the volume down on these hats as well. You'll see why in just a moment. So we're just tucking these back right now. We're getting rid of some of the high frequency content. All right. I'm going to check in with the chat in just a second, but before I do, for those of you who aren't really familiar with me at this channel, I use some visualizers off the screen here that sort of help me keep our frequencies in line when I'm working on headphones. So off the screen here, I'm looking at an isotope tonal balance control plugin and also a FabFilter Pro Q3 EQ plugin so that I can kind of get a visual representation on some of these frequencies that we're working with here. That sort of just helps me keep from pushing, way too much high frequencies that maybe I'm not realizing that we're listening to on the headphones, for example. I think we're starting to get this groove a little bit sounding pretty good. Just a little tiny bass, basic drum groove that we can start building with today. Well, we've got, let's see here. I'm just going to finish up what I want to do with these hats, and then I'm going to check back in with the chat. So what we did with the hats is we just sort of spread out the sounds that we're using among those 4 different hi-hat sounds. What I'd like to do now, though, is put in some variations that kind of don't happen every single time, for example. What we could maybe do would be, I don't know, we're on bar 1 here, so I just put in a new hat on this particular step here. I'm going to pick, any hat except for the, first main hat. I'm going to pick like the 4th hat, for example. But if I go back over to the trigger page, while I'm holding the step that I just put in, I can actually start rolling this condition knob, and I can set all sorts of conditions on whether this trigger, or this step rather, will actually trigger every time it plays through the pattern. I can, for example, put a chance of 50% chance that maybe this step will trigger when it plays through the pattern, maybe it won't. Maybe we can make that a little bit lower in velocity as well. Maybe like, 70 in velocity instead of 100. I'm still holding just this one step, and this is the key to, parameter locking inside of the Digitakt. I'm going to go ahead and maybe pan just this one hi-hat a tiny bit to the right now, maybe right 7. I don't know, maybe we'll overdrive it by like, not overdrive it, but just give it a little bit of drive, like 0.8, right? And let's see, maybe if I go to the tuning page, maybe I take this one and I detune it like, I don't know, 0.15 there, so that it's just the tiniest little bit different now than some of the other hi-hats that are happening, in our pattern. And keeping in mind that we set it to a probability of 50%. So when it plays through the pattern, it's not going to play that particular hi-hat every time. I can copy that one step, and I can start pasting that into our pattern anywhere else I want to. So I'm going to the other bars here, and I'm just pasting in that 50% probability hi-hat on a whole bunch of the other steps. Now, when I play the pattern, each time it comes across one of those steps, let's put another one in, it's got a 50% chance that it's actually going to play that hi-hat or not. So our pattern, our hi-hats rather, are going to be a little bit more evolving and a little bit more organic as we're playing through what we're creating. Let's go ahead and save, whoops, I'm hitting the wrong buttons now. Let's go ahead and, whoops, I'm really hitting the wrong buttons now. Let's go ahead and save at this time. I just need to get rid of that mistake of a sample. There we go. Save all patterns and project. Now that I've got the hi-hats a little bit more where I want them, I still want to do a couple of like 30-second notes, and we'll get to that in a sec. But I know it's been a while since I've checked in with the chat, so I'm going to do that real fast. Hey, what's happening, Robbie? Thanks for tuning in. What's happening, Lo? All right. Let's see here. So what I want to do is I want to put in, for the hi-hat, just a couple of steps where it's actually going to trigger 30-second notes, like brr, brr, instead of ticka-ticka type of thing. So what let's do is just play the pattern, right? Yeah, I like the way this is sounding. We got our variation on our hi-hats. Cool. What I want to do is I want to put in like another, maybe this is on bar 4, right? Yeah, let's put in another step here on bar 4. And let's tell this step that when it hits, that there's actually more than one step in this step. I can tell it to trigger 30-second notes instead of 16th notes. We can bring the velocity down on these so there's a little bit of movement. And what I can do is I can tell the length of this note to only hold for a 16th note. And now, whenever it hits that step, it does a little roll. Right on. That's sounding pretty good. If I let go of that step, it takes our menu away so that I can get back to my regular controls. Maybe when this step hits, it brings the pitch up of that hi-hat. I don't know, like 1 semitone. Maybe it bit crushes this particular hi-hat the tiniest little bit. I don't know, 22. Maybe we give it a tiny little bit of overdrive when it hits this as well. I'm talking like really, really unnoticeable, right? Like 0.9. Maybe we'll, pan this hi-hat like 10 to the left as well, just to get a little bit of extra movement happening like in our stereo field. And lastly, maybe we don't want this, brr kind of sound to hit every single time it scrolls through measure 4. So if we go to the conditions, we can tell this, I don't know, maybe it has a 50% chance of triggering. And then if it doesn't trigger, it'll just leave a space there. We could go ahead and copy that step now, and I could put that on some other bars as well. Maybe I could put it here on bar 1, paste that in, and if I hold this, I can change the sample that's assigned to it as well. Maybe we'll do that same thing. Now I'm on bar 2. I'm going to hold where I want it to go, and I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to change the sample as well. Put that on our hat 3. Let's go to page 3 and do this exact same thing one more time. I'm going to put it here and paste it in. Then I'm going to hold that down, and I'm going to select sample number 4. So now we have kind of a 30-second, hi-hat flourish, per se, happening potentially once every measure, but they're all set to 50% probability, so they may or may not happen. It just kind of keeps our hi-hats really moving and dancing around the snare drum and kick drum pattern that we created that are pretty steady. All right. So we've got a kick drum. We've got a little bit of a snare drum, kind of like a Skrillex Jack U sounding snare there. We might layer a more meaty snare with that as we continue building this groove today. Because I often like to layer like a meaty snare with these type of snares. In fact, maybe we'll do that next. Find, a little bit more of a snare just so that I can flesh out this drum beat the tiniest little bit more before we start adding some melodic elements today. Let's see here. I think we're going to just put a snare on track 4. So let's see here. I can just go track 4 and clear and take off the hi-hat sound that it's kind of put there for us. And what I can do is I can just play the groove and I can just start scrolling through some snare sounds. What I'm going to do is we're just going to play the groove. I'm going to hit Function and Sound Browser. I'm going to roll the Sound Browser to get us into the Sound Browser where I have my sound presets stored. And now I can just scroll through any snares that I've got here. What I'm looking for is a real meaty snare that doesn't have like a clap sound, but more of a just a, there we go, like that kind of a thing. That's not quite the one I want. Nope. I kind of want a tight, short snare as well. Oh. I think it might be this one here. This is called Snare Punch It. And let's see. Yeah, I kind of like that vibe we got there. I'm going to bring the volume down on that snare, though, so that it doesn't take away too much from our existing kind of clappy, Skrillexy Jack U snare, but rather it just sort of backs it up and makes it hit a little bit more punchy, per se. Yeah, I like the way that that sounds. Maybe we'll tune that new snare up like a little tiny bit, maybe? Yeah. I like it. Yeah, I think that's a little better even. Cool. All right. Now that we've got this extra snare to work with, maybe we'll put in a couple of ghost snares, per se. If I just open up the recording window here, we can maybe go to like page 4. And maybe put in a couple of extra accent snares here. Let me just listen to that. Yeah, cool. And what I can do with these is maybe, I don't know, change the pitch on them just a little bit. Yeah, we'll bring this one up 3 semitones. Just so that it's a little bit different, you know, sounding than our main snare hits that are happening a lot. And let's bring this one up. Oops, it's already tuned. Okay, I see. So I'm going to bring that up 4 then. And this one we're going to bring up maybe, I don't know, how about 7? Yeah, cool. So we get a little bit of variation happening in the pitch and timbre there. Maybe we'll pan our first ghost snare 14 to the left and pan our second ghost snare like 14 to the right. So we get a little bit of stereo separation there as well. Let's also go in and make the velocities on these ghost snares quite a bit lower, maybe like 75. Yeah, cool. Maybe even lower, actually. How about 65? Nice. And then last but not least, let's change the probability on these so that they don't happen, you know, every single time it goes through the pattern. Maybe we'll hold these down and change the condition on these to like 50% chance that they will happen every time it plays through the pattern. Go ahead and save that this time. All right. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me, everyone. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me on these live streams and collabing today, especially because we have another really big, important decision now as far as how this groove is going to progress today. We need to now decide whether we want to pull a bass sound. I think we'll do bass next. So we need to kind of decide if we want to try to pull a bass sound out of something already in the Digitakt and be working with the Digitakt only, or if we want to try to pull some bass out of like an instrument here, like potentially would be the MC-707 that I would, start potentially scrolling through some sounds and seeing if we find like, a bass or something that goes. So I guess we need to decide if we want to, if we want to scroll for the next sound, potentially a bass, in the Digitakt or in the MC-707. So in the chat, if you can just put Digitakt or 707, that's where I will search for the bass sound. So for those of you who voted Digitakt only, now would be the time to type in Digitakt, and then I'll try to find a bass sound specifically out of the Digitakt, and we won't worry about trying to sample something into it. And if we go with, okay, we've got a answer right here. We've got S now with Digitakt. All right, let's see about it. What we're going to do is I have some sound banks in the Digitakt full of melodic sounds as well. I have a bank called Cycles, which is building all kinds of melodic sounds out of just single cycle wave forms. And let's see about this. If I, let's see, I want to load our next sound, I think, onto pad 8. So I'm going to select that pad, and I'm going to start scrolling through, my sound banks here. So I'm going to go Function and Sound Browser to get us into the sound browser. So on how I've got this set up is on bank B here, I've got my prime kicks and prime snares. On bank C, I've got my prime hats and prime percussion, so 4 sound banks on these 2 banks. On bank D, I've got, let's see here, looks like just tons and tons of playable melodic sounds. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to try to filter these. Let's see here, synth or bass. If I just scroll for bass, and that's going to eliminate all of the sounds here that are not, potentially usable for bass. Cool. And then what we can do is we can just start scrolling through these sounds to see if anything, sort of goes with what we've started to create already. Let's see here. I've got the SLMK3 connected up via MIDI to the Digitakt, and if I set right, it's yeah, cool. Okay, it's already set to trigger the Digitakt's autoplay or whatever it is, auto trigger MIDI channel or whatever. All you need to do is set your external keyboard to channel 10, MIDI channel 10, and then whichever pad I touch, I'm in, hold on, let me get out of the, no. Cool, so whatever pad I touch now, I can play what's on that pad chromatically. I can change the pitch of it over here on the keyboard, so if I pick our snare, I can play it, across the keyboard. So, so that's what we're going to be able to do here for this sound. Once I get it loaded, I'm not going to be able to do that in real time, I don't think. Let's find out, actually. So if I play the groove and I go into the, no, we are. Okay, fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our beat playing, and I'm going to scroll through some sounds. I'm going to potentially be playing them over here on this keyboard, trying to find something maybe that we want to use. All right. So this is a sound called Mahogany. Right, okay, so I'm not actually playing those in. It's going to be after I load them. And it makes it a little harder for scrolling. Okay, so it's not actually playing the sound per se that I've, hold on, just one, let me try one thing actually. Just function and, yeah, I don't know why that's, it's not changing as I scroll through there. Okay, no worries at all. I just need to play our groove and sort of scroll through these this way then. Now the thing is that when I'm, creating these type of, grooves on these live streams in real time, I don't have like anything in my head that I'm already hearing and kind of seeking out. So sometimes we just sit here and scroll through some sounds for quite a while, if you get my drift, while I try to find something that, sort of does it for me, for lack of a better way to say that. Kind of like that one. Kind of like that one too. That one's kind of nice. Let's grab that real fast. And now, if I'm not mistaken, let's see here, change the camera. Now that one is actually a sound loaded onto that pad, now I can play it melodically. going to bring the filter down on this sound a little bit more, the cutoff rather. Checking the volume to the stream. Once we get this bass actually in, I'll sort of check the levels that we're sending out. Hopefully it's loud enough and you guys can hear everything okay. Writing a bass line is always difficult for me in real time because I tend to kind of overplay the bass. And if I do that, it's not really going to leave as much like of the frequency spectrum for the other sounds as maybe I would like. I think I'm just going to hit record and just try to tap something in randomly and see if, if we get lucky. If we don't, then I'll just delete what we recorded and I'll record something else in. So what I'm going to do is just get us into the live quantized recording mode. 1, 2, 3. Let's get lucky. Okay, that's 4 bars. I'm trying to play an 8-bar pattern. Yeah, I think that's going to work for now. I'm going to turn the volume on this bass sound down in the mix a little. And I'm going to save our project as well. I think maybe that bass can come down a tiny little bit more still. Sometimes it's difficult to know on headphones, but I want to leave, enough, room for other sounds to be added still. Kind of taking a look at the frequency spectrum off the screen there. And now I'm going to take a look at the volume that I'm sending out to the stream with the music. A little low. Hopefully that's a little bit louder, but hopefully it's not too loud. Just let me know if I'm distorting anyone's phone or monitor speakers. Get a tiny little bit more level than my phones today. All right. Is that sounding okay? Is the mix sounding all right to you guys at home? Just let me know, along the way. What we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and check in with the chat real fast, see what I'm missing. It's a really interesting question here that I'm not quite sure I'm understanding, and I don't really know how to pronounce your name, so sorry as I butcher your name here, Hordor Smari. But he's asking, is there a way to do that for the first time the pattern plays so that the cutoff doesn't reset every beat? I would imagine that you can just use the parameter locking features to get anything, you want to happen. But typically, with like the cutoff and stuff, you might need to use more than one pattern. If you want one part to have the cutoff down, and then another part to have the cutoff up, I might just make 2 different, patterns specifically. We're going to make quite a few different patterns today, for example. Like, we're not going to be just jamming with one pattern only. Hey, what's happening, Marcelo? Thanks for tuning in. We got Sklandorok in the chat. I'm sorry if I'm butchering everyone's name today. Hey, Sky Tortoise Ferryman, thanks for tuning in. All right, we got North21 in the chat. All right, hey, what's happening, Isaac? All right, volume is good. Fantastic. Hey, thanks, guys. All right. So, if anyone has like a idea for a name for the groove that we're creating, let me know in the chat along the way, because if we name the groove, that kind of gives me, more idea, maybe more focus on what we're actually creating as well. Okay. I think we have a a really actually neat opportunity here, and time for more collab from you guys. At this point, we could really easily just try to add another sound from inside of the Digitakt, not use the external gear. We could try to find a sound in the MC-707, maybe even like create an arpeggio or something using the arpeggio features in the sequencer that I'm using. We could maybe find like a melodic, sequence or something to add over the top of our groove. Or we have two more options. So wait a minute now before you vote. We could also potentially try to get something in from the Korg Electribe ESX-1 today. And how that would work specifically is I've got my Adrenalize sound bank that I made for the ESX-1 loaded, which is 64 patterns. And all of these patterns are in the key of F minor, which is what I'm writing in today. Sorry, Samuel, didn't go with the E major because I've already got this F minor, thing happening if we go this way. So one interesting maybe way or creative possibilities and all that kind of stuff. One creative possibility could be currently, when I press play on the gear over here, the Korg Electribe starts going. I could plug that in, and we could see if any of the existing, melodic content like synth parts and pads and chord stabs or whatever that are programmed into some of those patterns, if we want to sample something out from those and use it in our session today. Another interesting, so there's two. So there's, MC-707, play something in and sample it, maybe create an arpeggio or something. There's use the existing content from the ESX-1 that I've already built in that. And then we also have out today the Quasi-MIDI Revolution 309, which is this vintage groove box from like 1996, 7, 8. I'm not exactly sure all of a sudden. But this has a whole bunch of inbuilt, like, retro techno patterns and whatnot. And I can get in there to the menu and I can detune it from being like in C minor, which it normally is, to being in the key of F minor. And then we could just randomize some of the parts that are built into that and see if we could add some sort of like retro techno lines to what we're building today. I have no idea what that would sound like either. So those are pretty much. Actually, so 4 options then. So now would be the time to vote on whether we should go with something in the Digitakt, something in the MC-707, something in the ESX-1, or something in the Revolution 309. So I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes, or a couple seconds rather, see if anybody's got any specific, requests on that, and then we'll see what we can come up with. I like on these collab sessions that I really have like no idea what we're going to create, and then we just sort of create something together in real time, Okay, so we've got 2 for the ESX and we've got 1 for the 707. So we're going to go with the ESX. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this keyboard out of the way a little bit. I'm going to pull the volume down on the Digitakt, and I've currently got the MC-707 plugged into the Digitakt. We're just going to swap that out really quickly here and go over here and go left and right from the ESX directly into the Digitakt. Now, we're going to collab a little bit more, and this could be a deadly mistake, or it could be awesome. And that's sort of the fun of these live streams. There are 64 patterns now in the Electribe ESX-1. I've written all of these patterns in the key of F minor, which is what we're writing in today. So let's choose a pattern number randomly between 1 and 64. The first number that comes into the chat, I'm going to pick that pattern in the ESX-1, and we'll see if any of the elements of that pattern slot into the groove that we're making. This could be, awesome maybe, or it could be really scary, horrible. Let's find out. All right, we've got a number. Lo says 7. Thank you, Lo. All right, let's do it. We're going to go over here to pattern number 7. Pattern number 7 is called Dubbin' Ya. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the volume back up here on the Digitakt, and I'm going to bring the volume down over here on the ESX. well, I just need to tell the Digitakt, like, oh, did I just lose my what a bummer. Okay, so I've got the camera selection on hotkeys. So if I press Z and X, it changes the camera, and pretty much every week that just shuts off about halfway through the stream or whatever. So now I've got to do it, excuse me, by hand, which is okay. I'm not sure why OBS, does that to me pretty much every week though. All right, so what we want to do, let's see here. I just need to go to the sampling page, which is page 3 in the internal mixer here. And I want to turn this to a dual input so that I only have to adjust the input level with one knob. We can have like the input be a stereo input, or we can have the input be a dual mono input. We can put like built-in reverb and delay on the input if we want. We're not worrying about any of that. All we're worrying about is getting a little bit of level into the mix at this time. And then in our sampler page here, if I just press the sampler page, I just need to make sure that our input in the sampler window is set to input left and right, and that the monitoring is set to yes, on. And now anything that comes in, we'll be able to hear that. So I've currently got the oh, it's right, no camera thing. Okay, so I've currently got everything plugged in and routed. So all we need to do is just hit play on the Digitakt, and if I turn up the volume now, we should, oh, I see, is that because of this here? Is that what the deal is here? It is. Okay, cool. So as long as I press the play over here on this sequencer, then everything is in time, and if I start bringing up the volume over here, exactly, now we're starting to hear this other pattern come in. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous and muddy and all that. No worries. What we're going to do is start muting the drums. Actually, I'll mute all of these. I'm just going to mute every track, right? So that we just get back to only hearing what we've already programmed in the Digitakt. Then I'm just going to start unmuting some of these tracks here. So there's a dub stab. Doesn't necessarily go super great with what we've got here. It does go though, because they are in the same key. What else we have here? Ooh. We have a really cool vinyl sound. I don't really think we're trying to get like a gritty lo-fi vinyl going today though. Anything else hiding in the melodic section? Kind of an offbeat drum groove there, but I'm really looking for like more melodic content. Let me see if we've got any other here. Whoops. Looks like there's one more stab sample hiding out in there. I don't think it necessarily really goes with what we're working on. All right, so we didn't really find anything in that particular pattern to sample. I'm just going to scroll to the next pattern. Actually, maybe I'll just scroll a few more patterns into it. All right, this is pattern 30, and we're going to do that same thing again. I'm going to mute all of the tracks on the ESX-1 and press play over here on the external sequencer. So that gets us, our pattern going, and that gets us our MIDI to get the Electribe going as well. Now I can just start unmuting these parts. That doesn't go at all. Nothing on keyboard part 2. Weird little hit there. Not quite what we want, I don't think. Just seeing if there's any other melodic parts hanging out down here. Cool snare drum. Wow. Here's our here's our snare, but blended with that new snare. I really like the meaty sound of that new snare. And let's see here. How do I'd like to sample that, I think. And then maybe we could layer that with our other snare at some points during what we're creating here. I really like the way that that's sounding. All right, let's go ahead and just sample that snare in. All right, I can't change the camera that way anymore. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're already on the sample page. All I have to do is hit yes to start sampling. Boom, pop that snare in, hit yes to stop. It's going to normalize that snare. Now we can go ahead and just edit that out real fast. Zoom way in there, you know, boom, boom, boom. All right, fantastic. That was pretty good. Yes, and trim. All right, let's get the end extra air off of that extra snare. Maybe a little bit more. Oh, even better. Cool. And let's go ahead and hit yes to save this. And let's just give this a name real fast. We'll call this, oh, how about snare ESX-1. Couple of dots, and then who knows, just some random stuff so that it's got its own exclusive name kind of thing. And we'll go ahead and save that. Sure, we can go ahead and we don't really need to. Yeah, let's just put it, or actually, hold on. Yeah, was that a? Whoops. Oh, come on, Dean, don't do that. Function no to get rid of that. And did I have already something on that? Is it? Okay, I didn't. Fantastic. Cool. So now I don't want to do that. I just want to save it. There we go. Fantastic. So now we've got that snare in there if we want to use it a little bit later in this session. But what we need, though, is we need a part to go with what we've got going here, not just, you know, extra drum sounds, because we've got plenty of drum sounds inside of the Digitakt already if we want to go that route. But I really liked that snare. What let's do then is, for the purposes of the live stream, let's keep going one more round with the ESX. This is the beauty part of like trying this, you know, type of creative stuff. Sometimes things completely, you know, jump out at us and get us really excited. Other times, maybe not so much. Well, based on the original chiptune suggestion from Samuel, this pattern is called Arcadiacs. Let's just go ahead and see what this pattern sounds like. I'm going to go ahead and just mute all of these parts in this pattern here, and we'll press play over here on the external sequencer to get our pattern going in time. I'm just going to start unmuting some of these, and we'll see what we can come up with. Kind of a low bass, so we don't really need that. There's sort of that arcade sound. I really don't think it's quite what we're looking for here. So let me go ahead and keep looking. More cool percussion stuff here. But what I really would like to find is some melodic content. All right, it's not going to look super great on the melodic here. All right, no worries. All right. So now, like it's obviously not, you know, bringing out those, you know, fantastic, amazing results that, you know, let's just try one more before I swap it over. How about we'll pick pattern 46. This one's called Hitman 13. I'm going to go ahead and mute all of these tracks again and press play. Cool. Oh, whoops, bring the volume back up. Yeah, it's kind of neat, but doesn't really fit the vibe. Nothing on that pad. All right. So that didn't really give me anything to work with, really, that was doing it for me. So I think what we're going to do is go ahead and just swap it up then and move over to the MC-707 and start doing some scrolling through sounds from this box. What we're going to do is, whoops, sorry about the volume clicks there, is I'm just going to plug the MC-707 back into the Digitakt. All right, from the main outputs here. And let's see, I think I'll start with that one first. What I want to do is, let's see if I can show you here. We just want to turn one of the Electron's MIDI tracks on. So I'm going to choose track number 9 here. And if we go function and trigger, no, what is it? Source page? Yeah. And now if we go function and hold down the channel button here, remember I was talking earlier about the auto channel of the Digitakt, and that is, as long as we have our MIDI controller set to channel 10, and we haven't changed the auto channel settings inside of the Digitakt, then whatever pad I play, I can play what's on that pad melodically with the keyboard. So if I choose our MIDI track, now I can play whatever's on that MIDI track melodically. So if I choose channel 3, which is the channel that I have selected here, now I'm actually playing the MC-707 melodically. And I can, scroll through sounds in here. We can use, if we want, we can use the inbuilt arpeggiator function in the SL-MK3 to try to help us create like a pattern or something. But what we'll need to do is just go to where we can scroll for sounds. All right. And I believe this is where we can do that. Whoops. I'm going to go to synthesizer sequence for like, something maybe we could use as an arpeggio or something to that effect. Cool, and now we can just sort of hear these sounds as we're playing back the groove. I'm just going to check in with the chat a little bit before I actually do this and make sure that I'm not, missing anything. Hey, what's happening, Ricardo? Thanks for tuning in. Hey, we got Original Synth in the chat. All right. Yeah, I don't actually have a lot of experience using that random patch generator on the MC-707, Isaac. So we're not going to get into that today. What's happening, Ives? What's happening? Nothing pretty about synth. All right. What I am going to do then is just go ahead and press play on our pattern and start maybe scrolling through some sounds here. Am I in the right camera? Yeah, on the MC-707. See if we can maybe find something that suits what we're creating. Still feel like the stream level's a little too low, maybe. All right. And again, I'm not looking for anything in particular. We're just kind of scrolling randomly through sounds here. I'm in their sequencer sounds section. Classic Roland sounds, What happens if I turn the arpeggio on and I latch it so that when I, hold something down on the SL-MK3, that it, holds that arpeggio out? Let's just see what happens. Now that I've got it playing an actual arpeggio, I can scroll through the sounds. See if anything kind of jumps out at us. trying to choose sounds in real time is always a bit difficult for me, because I don't necessarily have that end goal in mind, you know? That's number 23, it's not bad. When I'm scrolling through these sounds here, I'm not necessarily just listening to see if the little arpeggio, you know, pattern that I put in sounds good. What I'm just trying to listen to is the timbre of these sounds and see if anything just sort of starts slotting in frequency-wise, kind of, with what we're creating already. For those of you who don't quite understand, you know, why I'm just scrolling through sounds in real time instead of sitting here and making, you know, something from scratch every single time I need a new sound, it's just because I don't work that way. I have sound design sessions and then I have music writing sessions, and I'm typically, you know, either making sounds, like programming sounds from scratch in a synthesizer, working on a bank or something like that, or then, you know, when I'm writing, I typically don't, you know, take the time to, you know, stop the session. I mean, making a sound can take me up to an hour and a half, you know, from scratch, for example, because I put that kind of time into making the sounds. And I don't really, you know, cross over into the sound design when I'm trying to write stuff specifically. So sometimes, you know, on these live streams, we can just kind of sit here and just scroll through sounds. It's not that I don't know how to make sounds or program sounds. It's just that, you know, we're in this sort of creative space and I don't have a specific, you know, goal that I'm after. And we're just kind of scrolling around trying to find something that gels with what we're creating, you know. I know it gets a little tedious sometimes, so, you know, I apologize for that. Maybe what I want, actually, is not like an arpeggio type of sound. Maybe we want a different kind of sound. For instance, maybe we want, well, I don't know, like to scroll around in the synth pads category, for example, for a little bit. See if any of these sounds sort of gel with what we're creating. Let's find out. Whoa, way loud, that one. Oh, I'm still on arpeggio. Let me turn that off. This pad here has kind of a sidechain compression and built-in kind of pumping. I kind of like that, except that our, you know, bass line is kind of lackadaisical. The rhythm just doesn't quite lock, I don't think. Ooh, hold on. Okay, yeah, I want to sample that in. It's kind of like a pad that sort of fades in. and then has a really dramatic stop. And what's cool about that is if we sample that into the Digitakt, and then we put a lot of, reverb and delay on it, when the actual pad sound stops, the reverb and delay will sort of help carry it over the rest of the mix. Yeah, I really like the way that that sounds. Let's go ahead and sample that in. It's a preset in the MC-707. It's A117 slow air pad. And here it just really chokes off. When I let go of it, it kind of fades in slow, but then immediately chokes away when I let go. That's sort of what I'm liking about it. And what we're going to do is we're just going to sample that in. I'm going to go to the recording page. I'm going to check the level coming in is okay. Maybe could try to make this sound a tiny bit louder. Let me just load it up and see if I can do that. Go to the mixer. Yeah, it's pretty much as loud as it's going to get for now. Okay, no worries. The Digitakt is going to normalize that once we sample it in anyhow. I want to get oh gosh, the camera. Come on now. I want to get, sorry about that. I want to get it to, hold for the exact, right amount of time. So I'm going to play the groove as I'm sampling this in. Now I'm just in record mode. No, I think that was it. I don't even need to re-record that. My initial instinct was I need to re-record that, but then it hit me, no, that was pretty much what I wanted. I don't think we need to re-record that at all. Okay, so here's we have the sample that we recorded now. Whoops, I didn't actually hit stop. Let's do that. And it's going to normalize that. Now we just need to edit out that sample real fast. All right. So I'm just going to zoom in here in the very beginning of that sound, and we'll hit yes to trim it. Now we're going to trim off a bunch of that dead air at the end of the sound. All right. How does that sound? I'm just going to need to save it first. Let's just call this, it is an F minor, so let's clear that out. And let's just call this F minor, let's see here. Actually, maybe I can just give it the name of that preset. What was that? Enter slow air pad. Let's call this slow air. Put a space in there and pad. Whoops. Cool. F minor, slow air pad. All right, fantastic. Saving. And yeah, let's put this on track 6 for now and get rid of this recording window. Fantastic. So now we've got our pad here, which sort of fades in. That sounds really nice. What I want to do, though, is I want to crank up the amount of reverb and delay that our pad has got. And then we're going to need to adjust how our reverb and delay settings are in this mix. Let me go ahead and play the groove here. I still think we're not sending enough level to the stream. I'm turning it up a tiny bit. Yeah, awesome. What I want to do then is I just want to put this pad to trigger on the beginning of the first bar. And it'll trigger now. Why is it so low, though? Turning the volumes up on that sound a little. There we go. All right. I still want it a little louder, though. So I'm going to go to the velocity and maybe max that out. See if we can get this sound a little bit louder now. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, what I want to do then, well, why is that? It sounds like, oh, I understand. Maybe because it's not playing in its entirety. If I go to the amplitude page, and yeah, there we go. There we go. That's why it wasn't quite as loud. It wasn't really holding the very end of that sample out quite as I wanted it to. I'm going to put a little bit more delay on by default. And then we're going to go over to the delay page inside of the Digitakt. We're going to change the delay settings. I like to put them on a ping pong so we get a left and right delay. I like to bring the width up so we get a more aspect of the stereo field coming through of that ping pong delay. And I also like to bring the feedback gain up just a little bit so we get, more delays ringing out. We're going to pull a little bit of the low frequencies off of this delay, and we're going to pull a little bit of the high frequencies off of it as well. Okay, fantastic. What I want to do is I want to remove a little bit of the low frequency content on that brand new sound. So if I hit the filter page once, we could get into our main filter. I could turn this into like a high pass filter if I wanted to. But I'm not going to worry about our first page. I kind of like to leave that open if I want to do something, after a default kind of adjustment, like removing some lows like we're going to do here. So I'll go to the second page of the filter, and I'm just going to roll this bass command up a little bit and remove any possible low frequencies, like really, really low sub frequencies from that pad sound that could be potentially conflicting with like our bass sound or something. All right, I think that sounds a little too loud in the mix still and needs a little bit more of this high pass filter. Yeah, now we're getting there. Kind of fine-tuning this a little. I like how there's a little bit of noise that kind of comes through on that stab as well, making it kind of a little bit gritty. I think at this time, it's going to be time to get the Digitakt's compressor into the mix so that we can kind of glue everything together the tiniest little bit. Let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go to the LFO page. Let's see here. One of three, compressor. I said LFO page, didn't I? I meant compressor page. And by default, the master compressor in the Digitakt is turned off. The mix will be set to 0. What we want to do is we just want to adjust their threshold so that it's barely just starting to pull down on the compressor settings. So if I press our mix, we see a little kind of representation over here of this line going down here. The line that's going down here is how much of your sound is, getting slammed into that compressor, and just how much the compressor is trying to squeeze that sound. We don't want it like even remotely looking that dramatic. We want it really subtle, actually. We just want to get up to the top area of this. We don't really want to squeeze the life out of our mix. So I usually have my threshold settings somewhere between 70 and 80. By default, it's 32. We're just going to play our groove and start rolling this threshold setting up until we get a whole lot less movement up here. Barely, barely, barely activating that compressor, right? Just barely. Maybe we'll go down one more to 74. Now I can start dialing in the amount of compression. I like the way that the attack and release are set up, by default, and the ratio at 1/4. That's the way that I like my, compression settings. That's fine. Now all we need to do is just start dialing in the amount of compression to taste. And with these settings here, this is basically just going to start gluing the whole mix together a little bit and making it sound a little bit more cohesive. Somewhere between about 40 and 55 is typically where I will set that compressor setting. Let's go ahead and play the groove and adjust this. And there we go. Everything has just started to glue together a little bit more. And now I can turn the level to the stream down a little bit, I think. what we'll do is tell this chord stab not to hit every single time it plays through the pattern, you know, every 4 bars. What we can do is we can go to the first page of the, you know, the settings here, and we can adjust this condition. I'm holding the step down so that the Digitakt knows that I only want to affect just this one step here. And instead of giving it like a percentage or, you know, like 59 or 50% so that maybe it plays, maybe it doesn't, we just kind of want to tell it, you know, when it plays and when it doesn't. So if I go to the right here, I can get into these kind of trigger conditions, like it only plays the first time out of 2 times through the pattern. That means the second time it plays through these 4 bars, it's not going to play that stab, meaning that stab will now play only every 8 bars and be a lot less kind of intense sounding, still giving us some, hopefully, some more room in what we're creating to add like maybe another melodic element, for example. If we go ahead and just press play now, we'll get a lot bigger pause before that chord hits again. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot better. Alright, thanks for hanging out with me on the stream, everyone. I'm gonna check in with the chat. Hey, what's happening, Steven? What's happening, Jamie? Hey, Gary, thanks for tuning in. We got, I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry, but oh boy, I'm not even gonna try. Future World Machines, thanks for tuning in. Alright, you guys. Got kind of an interesting little groove here. Still really basic though. Oh, I see. I have our, what an idiot. I have our main kind of snare layer muted since we did that second snare sample quite a while ago. Yeah, I'm gonna bring that down, I think, in level just a little bit, so that it's not overriding the mix. I'm just bringing that snare that I brought back in, bringing it down a little. Yeah. What I'm hearing in my head now that we have kind of a groove actually started is I'm starting to hear like more of a melodic lead, dun 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 dun, I don't know, something like, you know, that type of a sound. And I think we can probably get that type of a sound like from the Digitakt using like my Cycles sample pack, so, or sound bank rather, you know. So instead of going back to like the MC-707 for another sound or something, I think we're going to try to find one more sound that we can get into kind of like our main groove section here, as maybe more of like a free-flowing lead type of sound. And how I'll try to, you know, hopefully pick something like that is maybe we'll go ahead and save at this time, I suppose. And then I'll just play the groove, and I'm going to scroll through my Cycles presets and see if any of those sounds, maybe like timbre-wise, strikes my ear or something. Now, when I scroll those sounds, I won't be able to like play them in key with our mix. They'll just hit at a C by default, and our mix is in F minor. So I'll need to just kind of listen for the timbre of those sounds per se, not necessarily if they match up 100% in key, for example. What I mean by that is if I start our groove here, actually, let me make sure I'm loading on an empty track. I think we have... yeah, we have track 7 available, so I'm just going to go track 7 clear so that it's not confusing at this time for me. And I'm just going to play the groove and start scrolling through some of these presets. So if I go function in sound browser, now, actually, yeah, wait, I can probably do it here, right? Yeah, I have a filter on for bass right now, but if I take that off and I put in a filter for synth, leads, and pads instead, and then we go back to some of these sounds. Playing these quite a bit lower in the octave than I would like to be previewing them at is the thing. Ooh, but that's a really special sound right there. Let me just grab that sound. And then, oh, I see, it doesn't want to let me go all the way up. It only wants me to go down on that. Okay, that's fine. We're having a, let me see if I can change the camera so I can show you what I'm dealing with here. This particular sound that I've chosen, I was hopefully trying to play it, you know, way up high. But unfortunately, once I get to here, we lose pitch octave on the Digitakt. The Digitakt can only pitch a sample up 2 octaves, but it can pitch a sample down like 4 octaves. I want that to go a little higher. There's ways we could like resample that in and try to go, you know, work around the limitation of the pitch limitation, but I think it might be just easier to scroll for a different sound instead. One that maybe has more high frequency content in it. Ooh, that's a nice sound too. Can that one go up high? What I really need is I need an octave higher than this is letting me go with some of these inbuilt sounds, as you can see. And then it stops. We don't get that extra higher octave, and that's really what I'm trying to find a sound to play in, is that higher octave. Okay, so I think what we're going to do then is go ahead and not worry about scrolling through those sound presets, but just maybe scroll through some actual samples inside of the box. So I'm just going to play the groove, and we're just going to go to samples, and then I've got where I've got my samples stored inside of the Digitakt here. Let's see, what do I have? This is my second. I actually have 2 Digitakts, you guys. This is my second Digitakt. So all of the samples that are in my first Digitakt aren't necessarily in here, for example. So I'm like, okay, you know, how do I find what I need? You know, let's see here. What I need is really just like a sound that I could, yeah, you know, something like these that I can use to play like a higher octave with. Yeah, like that right there. I'm gonna grab, is that the right one? Yeah, I'm gonna grab, actually I'll grab both of those just in case we need the higher octave one. I've selected them by hitting the yes button, and it puts the little check by those samples. We push to the right, and then we can load those samples to project. Okay, fantastic. Now I can go ahead and assign one of those samples to our free pad here. Let's go to the second page, the source page, and I can assign either one of those new sounds. I think we'll start off with this middle one here. Now, as long as this pad is selected, which it is now, then I can play that sound melodically. Yeah, and the goal was to get up to that higher, you know, higher frequencies, you know. Because it is a sample that we are playing melodically, the higher we go in pitch, the shorter the sample gets, you know, down here. You know, it holds out for about, you know, but up here, it's very short, okay? So the higher in pitch we go, the shorter that sample gets. That's just, you know, how, you know, pitching samples works, for example. But what we can do is we can give a little bit of extra life to this sound right off the jump by going into the amplitude page, giving it a bunch of reverb and delay, right? Because it's going to be kind of a lead sound that we're creating here. Maybe give it a little more volume. And what I'm going to do then is just play our groove. And then maybe just try to figure out a little part that we can play in. Before I do that, though, we never actually affected the reverb settings inside of the Digitakt. We did with the delay settings, and we, turned that on ping pong and gave it a little bit more width and feedback. But the reverb settings, we didn't actually adjust at all. So I'm going to make the reverb time quite a bit longer. I'm going to cut off a little bit of low frequency content from the reverb and a little bit of high frequency content from that reverb as well. Now when I play the sound, we get quite a bit more of like a robust lead sound with that extra reverb. Okay, let's play our pattern here. Hey, what's happening, Douglas? Thanks for tuning in. What we could do is just maybe try to, come up with something we could play in. Keeping in mind that we only get a 4-bar pattern inside of the Digitakt. So that's something to keep in mind, Maybe we want to see what the arpeggio sounds like on this particular sound. Probably not, but it's always kind of fun to try. Oh, I see. Because I don't... There we go. It wasn't in sync because I did not have the clock coming from the SL MK3. But if I press play on the MK3, then it is in sync. And if we do that arpeggio type thing and latch it, it's at least, in time. I don't think it's quite what we're looking for, though. No, it isn't. So I want to see what I can come up with then to play in for this part. Oh, I still am on arpeggio, aren't I? Take that off. Yeah. Just gonna kind of mess around a little bit, see if I can kind of come up with the part maybe. Then after I come up with the part, then I can kind of dial this sound into the mix maybe a little better. My brain is telling me that I want to play an 8-bar pattern, but I've only got, 4 bars that I can play in the Digitakt. So I'm kind of trying to come up with a melodic part that has a build and a finish all in 4 bars. It's not really coming though. I don't think I want to go quite that far down. How high do I want to go? Up there, it's really stretching the sample, maybe a little more than I would like. So really, it's like this octave here that sounds maybe the best with this sound. Let's see what happens. Sometimes we just get lucky. Oftentimes we don't. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just trying to feel it, sometimes. Not really feeling it today, though. Just trying to get lucky. See, I really would like that 8-bar pattern. Okay, okay. Here's what we're gonna do. What I can do is I've pretty much written a call and response type of synth part here, but it's happening, you know, a little bit too fast and too often. We're gonna go ahead and save before I make any adjustments. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell the response part of this little synth line that I've written to play only every other time we play through the pattern so that it's not quite as overdriving the vibe per se. And I believe it's this fourth pattern here, if I'm not mistaken, fourth measure of our pattern. Let's find out. Exactly, it is. Okay, so this is sort of the response part to this call and response type of synth line that I've created. What I'm going to do is go to the trigger page, and on the probability, I'm going to tell each of these 5 notes to only play the second time we play through the pattern. And what that does, 2 out of 2. So it's not going to play this step that I'm holding down. It's not going to play it the first time we go through the pattern. And what is that doing exactly? Well, what that's doing is creating an 8-bar loop, basically, instead of a 4-bar loop. With our melodic content, I'm setting each of these notes to only hit the second time we play through the pattern. And now what that's going to do, take a listen to this. We're going to get to the 4th bar, but the first time it's not going to play my little response part, and then the second time through it will play those notes. So it's going to give the pattern, the sort of feeling of an 8-bar pattern as opposed to just that constant looping of a 4-bar pattern. I hope that makes sense. Let me take a rest. Okay, so you hear how that little response only happens every other time? I see in the chat that Douglas has been feeling a little bit uninspired. I actually have a really great suggestion for anyone in the chat who may be feeling a little bit uninspired or maybe a little bit of unmotivation. Anyway, I've put together a website called deansmojo.com. It's not really a website, really it's just more of a one-page list of ideas on how to get your studio mojo back and keep your studio mojo in top shape so that you don't feel uninspired to sit down, because it happens to all of us. There's plenty of times in here where I'm trying to sit down and work and I'm not inspired either. And that list contains a whole bunch of ideas. deansmojo.com, all one word. It contains a whole bunch of ideas of things that you can do in your studio to help you sort of get back in the vibe and start feeling that motivation again. Check that out if you guys are a little bit lacking on the motivation. deansmojo.com. All right. Thanks for tuning in, Snickle. Appreciate you being here. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so we've got that sort of call and response groove, but I'd like to try to make it a little bit more fleshed out. And this will, if this works, it'll be awesome. If it doesn't, then I'm wasting everybody's time and I apologize. But let's give it a go. I think we do some pretty fun exploration on these live streams, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to keep doing that. I'm going to go ahead and just say, before we do this, we've created this call and response kind of synth line so that this second response part only happens every other time that the pattern plays through. But what would really be awesome is that if these second set of notes, if these could somehow not be exactly the same the second time it plays through the pattern. I believe we can get away with like a cheat here, and I'm going to try to figure out, I'm going to listen to this real fast and figure out which of these notes I want to actually change the second time through. Now, stick with me. We're on the second page here of a 4-bar pattern, and I'm listening just to our synthesizer part that we just added. Right, those 3 notes, dun, dun, dun. So what I want to do is I want to tell, okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can totally pull this off, you guys. They'll bear with me. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so that a different set of 3 notes hits the second time it plays through the pattern. The first way I need to accomplish this is tell each of these steps to only play the first time I play through this 4-bar pattern. So I'm going to scroll these over and set it to 1 out of 2. This time, on the second time it plays through the pattern, all 4 bars, it's not going to play that note. I do the same thing here. We put this at 1 out of 2. And the same thing here with this one, 1 out of 3. I'm sorry, 1 out of 2, so that each of these will only play the first time we go through the pattern. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these, each one, and I'm going to paste it into the one next to it. Okay, and I'm going to tell these now to only play the second time it goes through the pattern. Now you're saying to yourself, Dean, those aren't on the same steps. You're creating the pattern that has different, the steps are not, they don't match, you know. And here's how we can get around that. We can use this micro timing feature by holding down the step we want and pressing this left button. And now we're now sliding this step around on our grid step. And if I slide it all the way back to the left, this step is essentially now hitting where this step is. And I'm going to do that with all 3 of the steps that I've told to only play the second time through. Now, okay, I hope you guys are following this because it's a little complicated. Now, on the second time through, these first 3 steps, on the first time through, we're going to get those first 3 steps. And on the second time through, we get our second 3 steps, okay? And now what I need to do is just adjust the notes on our second 3 steps so that they are different. Currently, it's playing a C sharp, and then a D sharp, and then an F. So I need to make these different, but keep them in key. Let's go ahead and make this an A sharp, and let's make this, oh, I don't know, a G. And let's make this one, oh, how about an A sharp? And now we've got is a different set of notes that are going to happen the second time our pattern plays through, but they're going to play through on these steps, even though we have them, you know, programmed on the step next to them, because I can't put 2 sounds on the same step. So we do that sliding on the grid thing. I hope that made sense. I know that's a little bit, you know, advanced. Let's see if, you know, if what I did is A, accurate and, you know, does what I expected to do, and B, let's see if those new notes sound decent the second time through the pattern. I'm gonna need to turn that lead up a little. I just need to change the notes themselves. They don't sound all that great. Maybe try that. I'm trying to find that final note now. Maybe it's a high F? Let's find out. So here we have, and now we'll change. Exactly. Yeah, it's playing an octave higher on that last turnaround now. Bum, bum, bum. So we go down, but now on this turnaround, we're gonna go up. So we've essentially created an 8-bar melodic pattern inside of the Digitakt now, which is, you know, really based around these 4-bar patterns. It's a really, really neat thing that you can do using the parameter locking to get your notes to maybe only trigger the first or second time the pattern plays through. I hope that was clear in what we did there. We're going to go ahead and save again at this time, and I'm going to check in with the chat, you know, make sure that I'm not missing any questions. Yeah, future world machines is absolutely correct. Got a 707 and a TRR8S. Absolutely would be a dream setup. The bonus of stuff, like those two machines as well, is you've got the faders so that you can bring your tracks in and out in real time. I really, having the faders for stuff like that really, really takes the gear to another level as far as like live jamming is concerned. We don't really get that on the Digitakt. I can mute tracks, and a lot of people actually are pretty performance oriented with their Digitakt. I'm more of a get in there and like kind of program it out so you know what's going to happen kind of person. But there are some cool things that we can do. I think we just saved, but let's just go ahead and save again real fast. If we save our pattern into the temporary slot, basically, if I just go function and what is it? Function and yes, then it's our pattern is saved to the temporary area in the Digitakt. And I can kind of mess around with any of the settings I want and then press function and no, and it will reload the pattern as it is right now. What that means is that we can do like their little track all tricks where we like mess with the tuning of all the tracks and stuff like that and then really quickly reset them. Check this out. We just reset again by hitting function and no. I can reverse all the samples even. Then change the pitch. And reload. So you can get pretty creative. I can hold this. I can bit crush all the sounds. Crush them up. Change the pitch, right? Go over to the filter page. Filter all the sounds down. I'm still holding, the track all button or whatever the track button here. And anytime that I'm done, messing around, I just hit function and no. And I can reload that pattern in its entirety. That sort of, reloading and tweaking stuff is kind of a, an art form all to itself in the Digitakt. Not necessarily my workflow specifically, but definitely an awesome thing that we can do inside of this box. All right. What let's do is maybe go ahead and try to create a couple of different, patterns today that we can go back and forth between at this time. If I just copy pattern 1 and then go pattern 2 and paste, we can hold this for a second and it's going to paste that pattern into pattern 2. I can do that same kind of thing, maybe paste this into pattern 3 so that we've got 3 versions of our pattern. Now if I select pattern 1, maybe what we can do would be to take out, let's see, maybe we would take out our lead synth here on pattern 1 so that it's not coming in, right at the beginning of our song, for example. Giving ourselves maybe a little bit more of like an, intro type of thing. Maybe for this intro thing as well, we could sort of maybe take out that pad hit as well. So it's just like, maybe we could even take out this snare drum kind of thing. So it's just like the hi-hats and the kick drum and that chord sample right at the beginning, right? I took out the chord, and what I mean is the bass, rather. So I want to take out, I think, no, wait. What I want to take out is this snare. Yeah. This is just the beginning pattern now. Yeah, just sort of a little bit of a starter to get the listener like adjusted, to the groove that we're putting down. And then when we go into the second pattern, maybe we have, everything come in except for that big lead. So our big lead is here on 7. Maybe we take this one off here. And now we have pattern 2 with no big lead. So we kind of have like a pattern 1 for an intro, kind of like a pattern 2 that sort of introduces the snares and the sort of chord stab. And then by the time we get to pattern 3, it's more of like now our full and, robust groove that the listener can, get acquainted with before we start moving on to other things. Whoops. Probably let that one play twice, yeah. Then change to pattern 2. In fact, you guys, if you've been following my channel for any amount of time, know I love those kind of like impact sounds that help set off the sections and kind of really let the listener know, like kind of the downbeat, for example. Let's go ahead and put like a little bit of a impact crash in on the beginning of our second pattern here. I'm just going to pick a pad that we're not using. Right, it would be that extra snare that I sampled, could be a pad that I can use. I'm just going to go track and clear and make sure that that track is completely reset. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find an impact crash from my samples that we can sort of load onto this track. In fact, in my sound banks, in my lo-fi dub sound bank, for example, I believe we've got, is that here? Let's see here. I can turn this filter off. Oh, I can just hit clear. Cool. There we go. And let's see here. Right. I believe I have, this is my lo-fi dub bank. And there's 256 sounds in this one. And I have one of them here. But yeah, there we go. Just kind of a default noise, kind of a crash sound. And if we just put that on the downbeat here, and we tell this one to only play 1 out of every 2 times, that gives it, you know, more of like an 8-bar feeling again, rather than that 4-bar feeling. And that will play kind of on the downbeat of our pattern 2 here. Yeah. Maybe we bring that down a little bit in volume. Maybe we put a little bit more delay on that, and maybe we pan that a little bit to the right. All right, so now when I play pattern 1 and then we go into pattern 2, we get that sort of crash on the downbeat that lets the listener know, you know, here we are in a new section. And again, we'll play the beginning twice, I would imagine, yeah. Then go over to the second one and we get our crash. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Maybe our snare is a little loud there. Still maybe. See how that crash played the second, you know, time we let it go a full 8 bars. Now I can change to our third pattern and bring in our lead sound. All right. And we definitely want to let that play again. From there, we could pretty much go wherever we wanted to go. We could just maybe take pattern 2. Maybe I could copy that over and paste that into the next pattern. Now, you guys remember that I just, you know, got rid of that extra snare that we sampled a little while ago? Let's see here, but maybe we want to change the snares up on pattern 4 and like change out maybe this snare so that it's no longer playing that snare, but maybe playing the more meaty snare that we sampled out of the Electribe ESX. Is that, where is that? There it is. Yeah, awesome. Kind of dial that into the mix a little bit there. Yeah. I like the way that sounds. Let's save there. So, again, what we've got now on pattern 4 is a little bit of a shift up in the percussion where the drums are changing their sounds and vibe just a little tiny bit. Sort of, you know, just sort of pushing the song, you know, along and keeping the interest going. Maybe here what we do is we take out that stab so that it gives us, room in the mix to add something else at this time. Let's go ahead and save. And let me just take a moment and check in with the chat, make sure that I'm not missing any questions along the way. Again, if you guys have any questions today, whether they be Digitakt related or just, music production related in general, feel free to drop those in the chat and I'll do my best to answer those. Alrighty. What we're going to do is try to find, I think, a little bit of a, new melodic part to add into pattern 4. And, we might actually want to go ahead and give the Revolution a go here because I haven't yet. We did get a sound out of the MC-707. We tried to get some stuff out of my Adrenalize sample pack for the ESX-1. We ended up just getting a snare drum out of that, but hey, that's cool. I like the way it sounds in the mix. But now I'm thinking, man, we didn't mess with trying to get something in from the Revolution. I'm not really sure that that would go with what we're creating, but all right, let me think this through then. Okay, maybe instead of adding a new sound, rather the thing to do would be to add a new melody to that lead sound in that next pattern over. About just tapping that in. Let's see what happens. Not sure that that's the best, pattern per se. But let's see what that sounds like when we go back to back from pattern 3 into pattern 4 with that new lead and see if that's working at all. Not the most. Or at least if we were going to go with that, it might be like later in the track where we're actually building into more momentum and the bass line might actually need to change to match up with the groove like that as well. What we're into now basically is just kind of working on the arrangement of a groove, that we started from scratch today. We've been going for just about 2 hours. I think we've got a pretty interesting, groove started. This is often where things start to really slow down for me personally in the creation process as I'm really starting to, figure out exactly where I want the track to go. And stuff like that. I'm not really sure that we would want to go this direction this quick in the track. I feel like, it's kind of too close to the beginning to sort of get, that, sort of robust synth line going. So I'm going to delete what I just put in and I'm going to go ahead and save again at this time and maybe... doing it again though, see that's that robust playing. It's not really coming to me, and I'm just trying to decide how I want to approach it at this time. That's not right either. That's the second half is what that would be. Yeah, see, my brain is still trying to make this an 8-bar pattern if you haven't caught on to that. Yeah. Maybe it just needs to be really simple and I'm overplaying everything, you know? My gut is still to put more notes in at this time, you know? Maybe we put a little more reverb on the lead on this section, though. That's not the best part, really. And I think the stream is starting to drag because my creativity is not maybe up to par. So I think we're going to get ready to wrap it up, you know, rather than me just, you know, fighting the groove at this point. I find it's pretty easy to build like for me personally, to build up an idea in just about any type of style or genre that we, you know, want to create. But then once we get to this point and it starts to really be about the arrangement and the flow, things really start to slow down for me as I, you know, start really focusing on these. And typically on the live streams, when I'm, you know, starting to work on the arrangement part of the groove, things start to get a little screwy. And like, I don't want to waste everybody's time on these. They're already a little bit, you know, long. We've been going for a couple of hours already. All right. Let me just play this again from the beginning, see if anything jumps out at me, but I don't think it's going to at this point. I think it would have already, and I feel like I'm just kind of, you know, dragging out the session per se. But I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me on these live streams. For those of you who voted this week, I really appreciate it. For those of you who participated in the collab part of the live stream, I really appreciate that as well. That lead is too loud. That's not really doing it for me at all there. So I'm not exactly sure, you know, what I would do at this point or like where I would go with the track. I would probably take a break, you know, and then come back to this at a later time when like my creativity is back in like, you know, hopefully top form kind of thing. All right. But it doesn't look like there's any specific questions in the chat. So I think, again, we're going to go ahead and get ready to just wrap it up today. I really appreciate you guys hanging out and making suggestions along the way. All right. Yeah, I really don't think there's much that I can do without just dragging this out. I hate calling it. We're just doing, like I usually try to go at least 2.5 hours, but I think I've just kind of hit the wall today at 2 hours. Alrighty. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. And until next week, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Stay creative and take care of each other. All right. Cool deal. All right. Let's see here. Thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.